Welcome to the board wrap-up with Superintendent Dr. David Pennington. The school year is about to conclude, and this is our show for the May board meeting, and a lot of things to talk about. Ponca City Public Schools ending on the 23rd, going into the summer, and I know it'll be a busy summer for you, Dr. Pennington, but another great school year, and every school district has their challenges, but it just looks like everything really went pretty smooth for this school year.
Well, yeah, Phil, it did. Obviously, anytime you can get through a school year without any major crises, and we did not have any major crises, this year. You go back to last year and you think of all the drama that we all went through after what happened at Sandy Hook, and so you're just thankful that first of all it didn't happen in your district, and you're thankful that this year nothing like that happened at any other school district in the country. So I mean, there were a couple of incidences, but not anything major like that. And so we're happy. We've had a good year. We've going to graduate a great group of seniors with some outstanding students, and it's just kind of what you get used to it. You get used to our kids coming in and for the most part doing what they're supposed to do, working hard, paying attention to their academics. Graduate from high school, and then starting that next phase of their life.
May 23rd is graduation, and as our superintendent, you've done this many times. You really enjoy that evening, don't you?
It is. It's first of all, it's great to see the stands full. It is great to see the way this community comes out and supports its young people. What I really like is the way our kids act at graduation. All of us anymore have got family members, and maybe we go to other schools, and so we have a chance to watch how graduation is, or I talk to administrators across the state, and in some places graduation is just not a very dignified ceremony anymore. And our kids, our community still treats it that way. I think that's the way it should be. It should be respectful. It should be an opportunity to, and it's that balance of celebrating and enjoying the moment, but still being respectful. Because, there are some, there are people who travel long distances to come watch their grandchildren, their nieces and nephews graduate, and they deserve to be able to enjoy that experience without beach balls bouncing around and without people doing silly things that draw attention to themselves and draw attention away from the ceremony and what's going on. So, I appreciate the way that our kids act. It's not to say that occasionally they don't try to do something. There's always kids are kids, and so if you don't want them to do something, they're going to try to do it. But we haven't had a major incident in a while, and I anticipate that this year will be another great, respectful ceremony.
We are going to have a first for our graduation ceremony this year, and you talked about how people like to watch Ponca City High School graduation. Well, for the first time, it is going to be streamed over the internet, and so people all across the country, I guess, and across the world will be able to watch the streaming of our graduation.
We're excited about this. I don't know why we didn't do it sooner. We probably should have done it a long time ago. And we, again, as you're always thinking about what you can do to make it better, we came up with this idea. Probably one reason we haven't done it before is because of where we are. It's easier to do that, something like that, inside than it is outside. You have internet connection issues, but we think we have addressed those, and so we're going to try it. Mary Ladd and I were talking today that they've gone out and they've tested it. They're confident it's going to work, but it's technology. And in my experience with technology is anytime you do something for the first time, there is a snafu of some kind. So it's not going to surprise me if it goes off without a hitch, and it's a great thing. It's not going to surprise me if we have a problem. But whatever happens this year will be better next year, and we'll just continue to work at it until we get it the way it ought to be. But it is a great opportunity. My niece graduates from Owasso Friday night, and my parents, who live about 3.5 hours away, are not going to be able to come. My dad had surgery about probably 2 months ago, and he just can't drive yet, and so that's something that they really want to attend, but they're not going to be able to. And I don't know if Owasso live streams or not. In fact, I saw the Owasso superintendent yesterday. I may call him today and say, "Hey, are you guys going to live stream your graduation?" Because then my folks could watch at home, and they're in their early 80s, and so it's just when my kids graduated, it wasn't a big issue for them to come down and watch them. But that's been 15 years ago for my oldest son. So and I'm sure that's probably fits a lot of families in Ponca City who their grandparents can't come see their ceremony because of either they're so far away. It's a hard travel weekend, and so it's difficult. So this makes it easier for families, and we think that's a good thing.
Absolutely. We had a retirement reception for a number of educators for the May board meeting, and my question to you is, do school districts automatically replace those teachers? How does Ponca City handle it, and is it all transparent upon the budget and whether you can afford to replace those teachers?
Well, there are lots of factors that go in. Is it a course that we still want to offer? There are sometimes every time you have a vacancy, you have to look at that and you have to see, first of all, is it something we want to continue to do? The best example I have of that is when Pat Young retired. Pat had been teaching shop for us for a long, long time, and shop's a good class. I mean, there are some kids that like to take shop, but if you go back and you look at enrollment in shop classes in 2014 compared to what they were when Pat started to work for the school district, enrollment had steadily declined over the years. We chose not to replace that position. And so we'll look at each of these positions that we have. Sometimes it is just a purely budget decision, and you end up cutting those positions. Not because you want to, but because that's an easy way it's the less stressful way to save money. Our budget is still flat. We are still in the process of trying to make our budget in 2014-15 meet where we are financially in 14-15. And I know I say this a lot, and I know people are tired of hearing about it, but in the state of Oklahoma, we have $200 million less in the education funding formula than we had in 2009. We have 30,000 more students statewide. So we have less money and we have more students. And so for the last 2 years, and for us, that loss is $1.7 million. And out of a $30 million budget. So we've been trying to reduce our expenditure in personnel by $1.7 million to make up for the current budget reality. Some of that is by elimination of positions. Some of it's about right sizing, making sure that the number of teachers that we have in a building corresponds with the number of students in that building. The best example of that is West Middle School. West next year is going to have the lowest enrollment that it's probably ever had. We have a very small group of fifth graders that will become sixth graders next year. When we looked at the teaching load, how many students a day a teacher was serving at West, the average was about 110 kids per teacher. Well, that's a lot of kids. But if you look at the class size guidelines established by House Bill 1017, the maximum number that teachers can see in a day at West Middle School is 140 students. Well, when you think about, each teacher at West is 30 students less than what they should be by 1017 guidelines, that's lots of kids, that's lots of staff. So we are moving and eliminating 4.5 teaching positions at West this year so that we can get those class sizes to what they ought to be. Now, that's not easy. It means that we're going to lose some electives. Our principal's made a decision to change the way he does his schedule. But we have to right size that. And so when we look at these vacancies that we have, then that helps us right size. We may end up moving a teacher from one school to another school to help right size. So it's not necessarily a cut for budget reasons, but it is a budget reason. I mean, it is about making sure we're as efficient as we can be with the money that we have and provide the services that we want to provide to all the kids that are in our district. So that's a long answer to a short question.
Along those same lines, and I read the numbers, over 300 kids are graduating, but are we seeing larger graduating classes? Is it leveled off? Is it more or less? How is this year's graduating class compared to, say, the last 5 to 10 years?
Well, it's larger than last year's class. I think it may be the largest class, at least as I look at the numbers, and the number I got the other day was we were going to graduate 326 kids. And I think that that's probably going to be maybe the biggest, maybe the second biggest class since I've been here. My first year was 2004, 2005. So if it's not the biggest class in the last 10 years, it's going to be pretty close. So, again, what we've seen is we've kind of settled out from a student enrollment since the merger and the closure and all the things that's happened with ConocoPhillips. We didn't have large number of kids leave our district this last year. Really, the last couple of years, that's kind of slowed down. Our lower enrollments are up. If you look at our kindergarten, first grade classes, they are closer to 400 students than they are to 350 or 300 students. So we see a growing trend. What's happening is the baby boomers' grandchildren are starting to enter school. Now, what effect the recession has had on families' decisions to have children, we won't see that for a couple of more years. People that study that demographic stuff, there's a lot of, they can look at and if you have a really, really cold winter, about 4 years later, you're going to have a lot of kids in school. I mean, it's one of those odd things that seems to happen sometimes. So anyway, we'll see what happens. But we anticipate our enrollment's we don't see dramatic growth. And the reason for that, Phil, is if you look at, you just look at Ponca City, and there's not a lot of housing available. We're back to where we were probably since the mid '80s, where our population is basically stagnant because of housing. All you have to do, if you set on 177 in the morning, you can see the number of people that come into Ponca City from the south, and then they go to the west, and they either go to the refinery, or they go to Smith Tool, or they go to one of the manufacturing plants here in town. There are a large number of people that live south. It may be in Stillwater, it may be in Pawnee, it could be in Perry, but they drive to Ponca City to work. Some of that is choice, but some of it just is there's not enough housing available to accommodate all the people who work here. The same thing, you'll see people coming in from the north. And so if we had more housing stock, we would see an increase in the size of the population of this community, and we would see an increase in our enrollment. And so, that's where we are, which is not where I think probably, my guess is 5-6 years ago, people probably thought, the community's dying, our schools are going to, our enrollment's down. We're not, when I came here, we were the 17th largest high school in the state. Now we're 23rd. It's not because our enrollment is less, it's because the suburban areas have grown. Moore's opened a third high school. That's happened. Union, Broken Arrow, Owasso continue to grow. The Mustang Yukon, when I got here, we were bigger than Yukon. Now Yukon's bigger than we are. But it's because those areas are growing. It's not because, we're necessarily losing enrollment. So we've lost a little bit, but not that much. And again, we could grow, but we may not change where we are relatively to district size or high school size, just because those suburban schools are growing so much and growing so fast.
Anything else about the meeting in May that you wanted to mention to our listener audience?
We talked about the number. We talked about we got our notice on the number of our students who did not demonstrate proficient or did not score well enough on the third grade retention test in order to go to the fourth grade. That is a big deal, and there's lots of discussion about it in the state of Oklahoma right now. statewide, 8,000 students are, under the way the law is currently written, will be automatically be retained unless they meet a good cause exemption. For us, that number was 60 students. It's 60 students more than we wanted. It's kind of what we thought it would be. We know that 44% of those students are students who are on an IEP. So they receive special education services in this district. I think it's unconscionable that you would retain a student who is receiving special education services, especially if those services are for reading and they score unsatisfactory on a test. That's kind of why they're on an IEP. If they had everything they needed, didn't have a disability, then they would be reading at grade level. That's why they're on an IEP. We know that about another 10% of those kids are students who are ELL. That means they have a language other than English is the main language in their home. Now, when I say that to people, the first thing they assume is that we're talking about Hispanic kids. It's not necessarily true. We have ELL students in this district because their primary language is Russian. We have some kids from Malaysia. We have kids who are Hispanic. I think altogether there's about 7 languages that students in this district, that their primary language at home is something other than English. So those students, you just think about that. Their parents may not necessarily read English very well. So if they don't read English very well, we know one of the primary things that helps students be able to learn to read is to read at home. Well, if mom and dad don't read English to you, or if they read English to you but it's not really very good, or if you try to read to them but they don't understand what you're reading, there's just lots of things that make it more difficult for an ELL student to be proficient early in their education career. It doesn't mean they're not going to be, but it's just more difficult. But yet, those students will be retained if this law is not changed. Right now we have a piece of legislation that's come out of the House and Senate. It's sitting on the governor's desk. We are very hopeful that she will sign that into law. I was at a meeting yesterday, and the rumor is that the governor does not want to sign the bill because she wants to take parents out of the appeal process. In other words, what the new law does, the change in the law, what it does is, you've taken this test, you haven't passed it. Now you go to a committee that will review whether or not you should be retained. That committee will have on it a teacher, a reading specialist, an administrator, and the parent. And then that committee has to make a unanimous decision whether or not that student should go on to the 4th grade. The governor doesn't want the parent to be on that committee. It's just hard for me to imagine that you would purposely take parents out of that process. We know from years of experience that if a parent does not support retention, it does not work. And we have an obligation. If we think a student needs to be retained, it's our obligation to convince the parent of that. Before all this happened, before we had the new law and we're going to retain kids who don't read or don't pass a test, we had a process in place that when it came time, when a decision was made to retain a student, we had a meeting. Teacher, parent, counselor, administrator. They got together, they discussed what was best for that child. The school district had the authority to make the decision. If we decided a student needed to be retained and the parent disagreed with that, they could appeal that decision. They could appeal it to my office, and then eventually they could appeal it to the Board of Education. It's just, I just don't understand why you would take parents out of the process. I don't understand why what we had in place before didn't, would not work with the current. You just make the reading tests. I mean, we always looked at the reading test. It helped shape our decision, but it wasn't an automatic thing. It just floors me that a mother would want to take parents out of the decision, and it also bothers me that how easy it is to talk about local control, and how easy it is to talk about wanting to empower parents, and how easy it is to talk about wanting to turn decisions over to the local level until you get into office. And I don't care what political party it is, Republican, Democrat, whatever it is, when whoever the party is in power, my experience over the past 20 years as a school superintendent is they want to tell school boards, principals, superintendents, and parents what's best for them. And they want to take us out of the process. They want to dictate to us what we want to do. And it's becoming clearer and clearer to me that it's going to take a real effort on the part of parents, school board members, administrators, and teachers to take back control of our schools. And that doesn't mean I don't want any state regulation. The state has a responsibility to see that its citizens are educated. I have a responsibility as superintendent to carry out the laws of the state of Oklahoma to the best of my ability. But good grief, it's almost like I guess maybe what we need to do is we just ought to make parents go to Oklahoma City and appeal their case to the state board. Maybe they can appeal it to the governor. Mm-hmm. It's almost like they want to make every decision for us. And when the people who know what's best for that child, it's not me. I don't know what's best for a third grader at Trout who who scored unsatisfactory on that reading test. I don't know what's best for that child, but I am very confident that the classroom teacher that child has, the principal in that building, the counselor, and the parent together can come together and make a decision that's in the best interest of that child. If they disagree, then they can bring it to me. And if they don't like my decision, if the parent doesn't like my decision, then they can take it to the Board of Education. And I just firmly believe that process we had in place was a good process. It was fair, it was equitable, and the decisions that were made in that process were made in the best interest of the child. And it looked at an entire year of academic performance. It didn't look at just one thing. And that wasn't just for third graders. It's the same thing for second graders, and the same thing for first graders and fourth graders and fifth graders. Anytime we make a retention decision, we had that process in place. And it just bothers me that that's where we are right now in Oklahoma, that either they're so distrustful of school people, or they just, that's the only thing I can think of. They don't trust, they can talk all they want to about how great teachers are and how much we care for teachers and how important teachers are. But the bottom line is, what I see in what's happening in Oklahoma City with this law is, the bottom line is that our governor and our state superintendent of public instruction do not believe in the ability of educators and parents to make the best decisions for kids.
Well, let me ask you this, because I was going to ask a question and you just said it. Does this all go back to Barisi, or is it on the governor? Is it on Barisi? Is it on both of them? It just doesn't seem like, when Sandy Garrett was the superintendent, that we may have had conflict like this, but does it go back to Barisi?
This particular, Barisi has no say in this process right now. Okay. Now, she does not want to see the law changed, and I'm sure she is telling the governor to stand firm. Okay? She's telling the governor that you don't change this law. And there are some other people out there that are telling the governor, the Foundation for Education Excellence, which is Jeb Bush's foundation. Mm-hmm. This is a key component of the way Jeb Bush wants to do education across America. So again, Jeb Bush is telling Mary Fallon, don't veto this or veto this bill. It's not good law. I think there are, to some degree, all this education reform, whether it's the third grade retention law, the 8F grade card, using test scores of individual students to evaluate teachers, all that stuff is all supported by our state chamber of commerce. Which again that's the Walton Foundation, the Gate. I mean, you've got this real in education right now. You've got this real battle between who's going to decide what happens in schools. Is the decision making for public education going to be made by school boards and local school administration with a kind of an overall guidance from the state, or our decision is going to be based upon what the Foundation for Education Excellence thinks is going to happen? There's a group called ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, which is another group that comes up with education legislation. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the State Chamber of Commerce, are who's driving education decision making. And the problem with all that, people always want to change schools. And that's just the way, we always want to be better. There's always somebody out there that's got an idea of something we could do to do a better job of educating our students. Used to be it was the university people. It was the college, the dean of the College of Education at Stanford or Harvard or someplace like that. And those are all well-intentioned things. I mean, I don't think anybody in this process has bad intentions. But the problem is, so many decisions, so many of the stuff that's happened in this state and really across the country the last several years has completely taken out of the process school administration and teachers. Well, education doesn't work like anything else. If you pass a law that says that you have to improve, you got to redo your sewer system, then you redo your sewer system, okay? And so you can make that decision in Oklahoma City, you can make that decision in Washington, D.C., and pass it down to the local level, and they can just implement it. It's a sewer, but that's not what we are. Every decision, everything you tell us to do, that you want us to do, involves people. And it involves people that have strong opinions about how things ought to be done. And so, you just can't, you can go into a classroom and tell a teacher you're going to do this, 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 and this, but, unless you, in that classroom every day, you can't ensure that this, 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 and this is being done. You can go tell a building principal. It doesn't ensure it's being done. So what you have to do in education, if you really want to see change happen, then you've got to bring everybody involved in the process to the table. You've got to spend time with superintendents convincing us that this change, or whatever it is you want to do, is a good deal. It's good for kids, and it will work, and you can afford to do it. That's the other thing, that it's affordable, okay? Then it's my job to go and convince my teaching staff that it is a good thing, and also convince the board. The board's involved in this too. So you've got to bring all these people to the table. You've got to give them input, and then you've got to go out and you've got to sell it to parents, and then you've got to sell it to your community. And when you don't do that, when you just decree from above that something's going to happen, then you're going to get a tremendous amount of pushback, and things will fail. And I think that, at the end of the day, with all these initiatives that we've got going on, either they're going to change or they're going to fail. Because my guess is going to be, if the governor doesn't sign this bill, I hope the Senate and House will override her veto. But if they don't, my guess is next year you will see a large number of parents across the state opt out of the third grade reading test, because they do not believe that they don't want that pressure on their child. And we're not going to retain 20,000 third graders in Oklahoma because they didn't take a test. And we're not going to do that. That would be crazy to do that. You'll see a continuing rise in civil disobedience, and that's an American tradition. That's what we do. One of the things we do when we think the government's overstepped its bounds, and I think that's kind of where we are with this. There have already been, I know in Tulsa County alone, there were two lawsuits filed yesterday of parents of special education children who did not score, who did not meet the mark on the reading test. They've already filed a lawsuit. I think you're going to see more lawsuits across the state, not only from students in special education. I think ELL parents will file lawsuits. I think some regular gen ed parents are going to file lawsuits and say that they're going to question the reliability and the validity of the test to make that determination. And so, we're going to spend a lot of money on litigation when, again, teachers, counselor, principal, parents generally, not all the time, but probably 8 out of 10 times can sit down and make a decision about what's best for that child. And it just, to me, is a lot of waste. It's just, it just borders on being ridiculous. And again, if you listen to the debate in Oklahoma City, what you'll hear is administrators and teachers don't want to be accountable for student learning. Well, that's just ridiculous, okay? Or that all we want to do is we just want to pass everybody along, and if they can't read, that's fine. We don't care that they can't read, and that's going to sentence them to a lifetime of academic failure. Absolutely not true. I've been in education for 37 years. I can remember one of the very first discussions I had, sitting in a high school faculty lounge, was about the inability of some students to read, and asking the question, why can't these kids read? As a high school social studies teacher, American government, American history, the students who struggled in my class were students who did not read very well. And so I've always asked that question. When I got to be an assistant superintendent, was in charge of federal programs in Bristol, Oklahoma, in charge of title programs. So I worked with the reading specialists. Why can't kids read? What do we need to do different? What can we do? How do we help these students? What programs do we need? We need to change what can we do? How do we make this, I read well. It's just, one of the things that I've always done well. So it's hard for me to understand why somebody doesn't read. I don't understand it, okay? As a superintendent, if Terry Vogel were here, who's now my elementary curriculum director, when Jean Gatton was our director of curriculum and elementary director, when Patty Ladd, when I was at Bristow or Blackwell, Dr. Steve Hart, my assistant superintendent in charge of federal programs and curriculum, they will tell you that at least once a year, if not more, we have these discussions. What is it? What are we not doing? So we care about those kids who did not demonstrate, who scored unsatisfactory. Look, we're concerned about the kids who scored limited knowledge, and just because the state, didn't want to take the heat, decided that limited knowledge was all right to go on to the fourth grade. I would argue that if you're really concerned about kids having the reading skills and need to go into the fourth grade, then if they're not proficient, they shouldn't go on, if that's really what you believe. So I've always had these conversations, and what I will tell you is that nobody has an answer. There is not a silver bullet out there for helping everybody read on grade level. Here's what we know. The more you read, the better you read. Which seems pretty simple. So we read more in school than we ever have. We have more time dedicated to reading than we ever have. But that doesn't take the place of reading at home, either being read to or reading to somebody. Okay? That's critical. We know that for some kids it's phonics, And so we spend a lot of time on phonics. We know that that it is critical that we have teachers that have a real knowledge of reading. We know that the people that we have coming out of colleges right now don't have that foundational background in reading. We know that a high quality teacher makes a great, we have some teachers in this district that 100% of their kids read on grade level every year. We would love to clone those folks. But we know that right now in Oklahoma there's a teacher shortage. You know, we have, I think, 6 elementary positions open right now. And we have no applicants that we consider worthy of employing right now. It's scary to me, the number of the shortage of teachers in this state. Northwestern, which used to be a huge source of teachers for us, okay, they only graduated 27 elementary teachers this year. That's all they graduated. And I think 26 of them left Oklahoma. You know, when we went to the OSU Career Fair to recruit teachers, Garland, Texas was in a booth right next to us. Their starting salary was $12,000 a year more than ours. And they were giving everybody that signed a contract a $2,000 signing bonus. We've got real issues in this state with funding, with administration, with education policy, and you know, we can wish all we want to, and we can talk all we want to about quality of life, and Oklahoma's a great place to live. But you know what? If you think the best way to improve schools is to beat people with a hammer, then you're probably not going to get much improvement. And that's what the current state superintendent's philosophy has been. We're going to beat you with a hammer until you do things, and we're going to embarrass you and ridicule you until you do things the way we want you to do them, even though, in your professional opinion, it's not the right thing. You know, I mean, she is a dentist. She's not, you know, I'm sure she believes she knows about as much as running schools as I do with my 90 hours of graduate work in school administration. You know, think about that for a minute. I mean, how absurd is that? I don't think anybody that's watching today is going to let me go into the dentist office, you know, and tell them, you know, I've had my teeth have been, I'm 59 years old, people, I've been to the dentist for the first time when I was 4. I have, you know, 55 years of dental visit experiences. Give me that drill, I know how to do this. I mean, that's just crazy. Or I went to a meeting of the Dentist Association and said, no, I can work on your teeth. But we're gonna beat you over the head to make you do things the way we want it to. We are going to embarrass teachers. We're going to embarrass your school by giving them a letter grade, even though we know before the tests are ever given that the schools with the highest concentrations of poverty are going to be where the low scores are, which is where we need our best teachers to be. But again, you know, those of you in our viewing audience, I don't know what your job is, but whatever you do, if you had a choice of whatever it is, you can go to work every day and you can be at a job where, you know, you're going to go in, you're going to work hard, you're going to do your best, and people are going to say, hey, you're doing a good job, or you're going to go to a school where somebody's going to put something in the newspaper about you about, well, this where you work is failing, based upon not based upon 177 days of watching instruction, not based upon watching interaction with students, not based upon what parents think about the school, not based upon what kids think about the school, not based upon how hard you work, but because of a test that was given. And then on top of that, not only are we going to do that, but in the school you're at, where we know kids are not going to score as well because of social economic conditions, we're also going to tie your evaluation to how well your kids score, and determine whether or not you get to keep teaching or not. And that's based upon that. I mean, again, it's just this belief that we can embarrass people into being better is just, the bottom line is today, if in Oklahoma, if we decided we were going to fire all those teachers in those low performing schools, we don't have anybody to replace them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and in Oklahoma City, it's easy to say, well, take the teachers in our situation. Take every teacher at Trout and Woodlands and put them at Lincoln. Well, teachers aren't, they don't, it's not like transferring somebody who works at Conoco from the Conoco plant or the Conoco facility to Phillips or to Houston. The teachers, they don't think that way. I mean, you think about your house. You know, you think about the home you built, you move into, and how you take that home and you make it your own. And you get settled in that neighborhood, and you have friends and neighbors in that neighborhood. If you've been in a neighborhood for a long time and you like where you're living, it's tough to move. Well, that's what teachers are like in their schools and in their classrooms. They build community, and they build relationships, and they build relationships with parents. They, you know, as parents know that if they've liked their oldest child's third grade teacher, they want their next child to have that same teacher. And that stuff is important in education. And so you just can't pick up people and move them. I mean, you could do it, but to think you're going to do that and see dramatic results is just, I mean, all of it is just, as you can tell, I'm frustrated because we've been dealing with this now for 4 years, and so anyway, back to your first question, the deal on the reading bill right now is all on the governor. She needs to step up, and if people watch this, we're filming this on Wednesday. She has 4 more days to decide what she's going to do with that bill. And so I encourage you to go on the internet, find the phone number for the governor's office, call her, and tell her to please sign the reading bill.
Boy, do we have a good topic for the month of June.
Yes.
And we will.
And we haven't even talked about funding.
Right. We can devote a lot of time in June and July to a lot of these things that, well, we're going to have answers. And Miss Barisi is going to be up for election, too. So
June 24th.
Ms. Hoffmeister and Ms. Barisi are going to go at it, and that'll be a good subject in June to talk about. Have a great summer. We'll see you in June.
All right.
May 23rd, graduation for Ponca City High School. For Dr. Pennington, have a great summer, everybody.